Now I want to move into talking to my friend Heather, who's sat here so quietly and just listened to me ramble on. Which you've got to be used to by now from all the times that we've hung out and you've just listened to me hear myself talk. I'm glad that you laughed. It was supposed to be funny. But no, it's important that we talk about the other side of the coin, right? And it's important to me, and I know that it's something that you feel strongly about.
I do.
So, you have a son.
Yes.
I don't want you to feel like you have to divulge his name or his personal information. You can call him Mikey if you want to. But when did you first start having trouble with your son?
Well, actually, I have an older son that had problems. He's gay.
Okay.
And he came out in middle school.
Okay.
Which is very young. At that time. Mm-hmm. He's 23 now, so I don't know, 10 years ago or 13 years ago.
So how did you do with that then? Because that was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago.
So it was a different world then.
It was.
So how was that, just dealing with that on its own?
I always knew he was gay. I was just waiting for him to realize he was gay.
Okay. So you were good with it?
I was fine, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I grew up with gay people. I have it doesn't bother me.
Listen, you're preaching to the choir. I have gay relatives. I've had gay relatives. I have gay friends.
Right.
I don't harbor any kind of feeling. Listen, whatever makes you happy.
Right. Do your thing.
Whatever makes you happy.
So
life is too short.
But he had fought with depression and anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt at the time that I would not get him medicated because I believed that you have to have your frontal lobe, I believe is what it is, doesn't develop until you're like in your 20s, fully develop. And I had a friend of mine in high school that had taken Prozac, and she completely flipped out and took a paper clip and dug in her arm all the way up her arm. And so I was completely against medicating children, to be honest with you.
Sure.
But then as time went on, and I myself got medicated for depression and anxiety and PTSD. I married a man who is bipolar. And so I think my younger son was just kind of bound some way or another to have some issues. Start off with him in school, and he would do this whenever he got excited when he was in kindergarten. So he would be like that. And his teacher noticed that that's something that autistic kids tend to do. And there were other things, obviously, but that's the one that sparks in my mind because it's something I noticed too right away. So the school diagnosed him with autism. He's high functioning, so we don't have to deal with a lot of things, but he does have a sensitivity to water, to loud noises, to temperatures in the room, and really is bad with change. So anyway, so they diagnosed him with autism in, I think that was in first grade, that they ended up diagnosing him with autism. So he started getting extra help in classes and stuff. Well, unfortunately, I'm an alcoholic and addict, and I started using again, and me and my ex-husband were to separate, and I tried to give my youngest son time, hey, I'm going to be moving out, we'll be living here, and you'll be going back and forth, and trying to get him used to the idea. Well, that caused some I'll call it situational depression.
Okay.
Which makes complete sense. You're a kid, your family's breaking up,
Of course.
So we went through all that, and I got treatment, and now I'm sober, and practice a 12-step program.
Yay.
And that's where I met Joe. as he got into middle school, well, actually, he started becoming, wanted to run away from home. So, me and the school counselor talked, and she was supposed to see him, but it kind of fell through the cracks, and Jenna seemed okay, so we kind of let that go. Well, then things started getting not so good. In 6th grade, he hated us. And I'm sure some of this is just developmental stuff, you know. And we come in a tween. I hate that term, but it's true. Becoming a tween.
A tween?
A tween, yeah.
Is that in
it's
between?
In between teenager and child, you're
okay.
a tween.
Okay.
And
learn something new every day.
Right? So him not liking us isn't a really big deal. I mean, he hated us. And he didn't believe he had autism. And to make matters worse, my ex-husband didn't believe he had autism either. Even though he's been diagnosed by the school, he's getting help in his classes for autism. So that was something that he was struggling with. That I'm sitting here saying you have autism, and his dad is saying not. So
you guys weren't in agreement about his condition.
Yeah, no.
Which was causing conflict in him.
It was.
Okay.
But I tried very hard not to. I tried to make him know that it's okay, that it wasn't something that was bad or something that made him different in a bad way. It's just something he has to deal with, you know.
Sure.
Like I have depression and anxiety, and I'm an alcoholic and addict. Those are things I have to deal with.
Right.
Doesn't make me a bad person.
Sure.
Or not able to, you know. I try not to plant the seed that he would water.
Sure.
Let me put it that way.
Right. Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and I wonder at some point where the line becomes there's not something wrong with you, but you're sick, or you have an illness. Well, where does that become? Because kids don't want to have an illness either.
No,
right?
they don't.
I don't want to have the plague. If I'm a youngster, I don't want people to think I have cooties.
Right.
Right. Like, so that's a stigma in itself, right? Being sick.
Yes.
Or, you know, people looking at you like you have cancer or some sort of contagion.
Right.
You know, versus a mental disorder. So how do we, I guess a question would be, how do we communicate to our kids in a way, and maybe you can answer this, to where we don't separate them from their peers, right? In the way that we look at them, the way that we talk to them, the way that we make them feel. Like, you're just as good as any other kid. You're just as smart. You're just as lovable. You're just as funny. You're just as, you know what I mean? At what point, how do we communicate that in a healthy way, that there's not something wrong with you, but...
And we dealt with that a lot when we got to the depression and anxiety. He felt more... The fact when he started to have to take medicine. So what happened was he had developed some things I can't mention because it would just... I would hate someone find out who he is and then them know something that's super private about him.
Sure.
But he had developed some very odd behaviors and started sleeping a lot, was petrified to go anywhere. So we took him, what we did is we took him to this...
So some depression type stuff, some fear,
some
debilitating fear.
Yes, just, you know.
We've talked about that on this show. Fear is a mother.
It is.
It's a monster by itself.
It is.
So, you know, I can only imagine as a young person dealing with depression and dealing with debilitating fear and not having tools or resources. I mean, we're grown and we're just figuring it out, right? Like, I can't imagine being riddled with a debilitating fear at a young age and feeling alone in that, or like people didn't understand.
Right. No, it was horrible. The one thing me and my ex-husband do well is we actually get along really well now that we're not together.
That's good.
Yeah, it is. And we both have the attitude that, you know, we decided to have Jonah, and not that basically we decided to have him. He decided to be born.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to work together, which was really great because what we ended up doing was going to see this guy named Dr. La Barbara at Vanderbilt.
Okay.
And this is before medicine or therapy or anything.
Mm-hmm.
He did a series of tests, like 2 hours, not like physical tests, but, mental tests and whatever they are, he did. And then he had us fill out questions too. So basically that was to accomplish two things. One, so we had a clinical diagnosis of autism.
Okay. Which you have now.
Yes, which we have now. So now we all know he has autism, which.
So now your son and your ex are on board.
Yes.
And they're not deluding themselves
right.
that you're the crazy person.
Right.
Because I'm sure that you had to deal with that.
Yeah.
That was my perspective of what you were saying, is that they were teaming up against you.
They were.
That's how I would have felt. Like I was getting teamed up against and I was the crazy one.
I just knew that my thing was, well, you're perfectly fine having the school assist him because he has autism. Then obviously,
Right.
Yeah. So
as long as he was getting what he needed.
Right. And he did. He got a ton of support. They were so good.
Good.
But it helped us do that. And if we found out he had depression, anxiety along with that.
Mm-hmm.
So the next steps were, for us, we talked about it because I was still unsure whether I wanted to medicate him or not.
Mm-hmm.
But I've had depression my whole life, and my ex has bipolar. So we both said that we both would have liked to have had help when we were younger.
Mm-hmm.
And so we decided that we would go to a psychiatrist and go to therapy, because really you can't really... Medicine doesn't solve everything.
Definitely
it just
not.
doesn't.
Definitely not.
And we did our due diligence by making sure we had him tested. We did our due diligence when we went and, picked a therapist. We asked him if he wanted a man or a woman, and got him what he wanted. So they started putting him... I'm not going to remember what they very first put him on. But, I don't know, are you medicated? Okay.
It's okay.
So if you've ever had to switch medicines or start medicines, it's trial and error.
Yeah, well, and you can't just stop and start.
No.
Right? Like you have to ease into it and then you have to ease off of it.
Right.
I definitely understand that part of it.
And it can
especially dealing with psychotropics.
Right.
With mental and mental medication and antipsychotics and things like that. You can't just turn it off.
You can't.
Because it will totally fuck up your brain chemistry.
Screw you completely, yes. And so the first medications didn't work. And you have to be very careful because, especially mental medications can go one of two. Either they'll help you, it'll do nothing, or it'll make you suicidal.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had to be very conscientious of what was going on with Jonah when we started the medications. Well, then he had a breakdown and an anxiety attack, and he had planned to kill himself. So he went into the hospital, into Rolling Hills, and then...
So let me stop you for a second.
Yeah.
Because we just kind of grazed over that.
Oh, I did. I'm sorry.
No. And the only reason why I'm not going to let you is because I think it's important that other people realize that it wasn't that easy. I'm sure that was hard for you to wrap your head around and hard for you to accept. And I don't mean to get you upset,
horrible.
and I don't want you to get upset.
No,
no. For the sake of being helpful to other people, what was that like? Hearing that your child wanted to take his life, and I mean,
it's horrible. I got it because I've had suicide attempts myself.
Sure.
I get that, Dirk. It's like, it's like walking with like this 1,000-pound bag of rocks, and you're slowly going, and there's this, and it's dark, and you're way down, and you're going through mud, and there's a pinprick of light. And that's all you can see. And it's not because, at least for me, it wasn't because I wanted, oh, poor me. It was because
You just didn't want to go on anymore.
I just thought life would be better for everybody else without me. So I got where he was. I got that darkness.
Sure.
And to know that I couldn't do anything to save him was extremely frustrating.
I was talking to, just not to segue, but to relate. I was talking to a friend of mine earlier who's going through a storm, and they were thanking me for being compassionate and for loving them. And I said, I know what it's like to be in that darkness, and I know what it's like to be in that storm and to feel like it's not going to end. And I wish I had somebody there to tell me that it will pass and it will be okay.
Yes.
And soon you'll be covered in the sunlight. You just got to weather the storm. And I think that anyone who's been in that darkness can relate to that, and relate to that loneliness, and relate to that feeling like it's never going to end.
Yes.
And what I told this person was, I never want anyone to feel that way. So if this reaches somebody out there who's struggling with suicide, with suicidal tendencies, suicidal ideology, with not being properly medicated, with struggling with adjusting to medications, whether it be your children or not, or a loved one, there's help. And you don't have to be alone. You don't have to go through it alone.
No.
And there are people who understand, and there are people who will listen. And I'm going to put links to both suicide awareness, suicide hotline, and to my own personal contact information in the link to this video, so that people have resources and can reach out, because I think that that's important. Anyway.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, no, there is help out there, which is awesome. It was hard seeing him go through that, but we made it through that, and he came out not hating us, so that was nice.
I certainly hated my parents at some point.
I did too. I threatened to call children's services on my parents when they fought with me. Well, we didn't even fight. They just did something I didn't like.
Yeah.
I was such a brat.
That wasn't a thing when I was a kid. We didn't call Child Protective Services on our kids. Our parents kicked our ass.
Yeah, my family was really, they were really.
If you called the police on your parents when you were a kid, and where I grew up, the police would come and tell you that you deserved it.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure I would have been called an entitled little brat. That's what I was, man.
I do not understand the world today at all, because kids could not call CPS. I mean, obviously in dire situations.
Right.
But if you just called your parent, called the cops, or called CPS because your parents slapped you, or because they punished you, it would have been a laughable offense. In fact, they probably would have threatened to take you to juvie for making a false accusation.
Probably.
Lord have mercy. The world has changed, folks. The world has changed.
Yes. So Jonah got on new medicine in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Then he ended up having some more issues, and we were continuing therapy, and the psychiatrist, then he went into partial hospitalization, and then he had more issues, and he ended up in partial hospitalization at Vanderbilt.
Okay.
Which is the first time we have some hope.
Okay.
Because we were kind of losing hope.
Yeah.
We were asking, look, he is saying he wants to die. He doesn't have a plan. If you don't have a plan, they won't admit you.
Right.
Right.
So it's not premeditated. It's just
right.
It's just talking.
It's just talking. Right.
Right.
So the first time we get hope is really when we took him to Vanderbilt, and he did partial hospitalization, and now he's on Cymbalta. And kids with autism, they're getting a lot of help with a medicine called Abilify.
Mm.
And it's really helping their mood and some other things that are going on. Jonah, and after that, Jonah started cutting himself.
Mm.
And that...
So this is, again, one of those things, right? Like, parents are dealing with this stuff. They don't know how to react. They don't know how to relate.
No.
It's shocking. It's upsetting. They don't know if it's real. I have friends that are like, is it attention seeking? Are they trying? I don't understand. Is my daughter trying to hurt herself? Or is she crying out for help? And if she's crying out for help, what can I do? Like, I don't understand how to respond to that call. Because I want to hospitalize her. I want to protect her from herself. I don't want her to hurt herself. So in that situation, what do you do?
Well, I think you really need to rely on a therapist because we don't know what to do.
Right.
We really don't. Mm-hmm. You're a parent. You're in crisis mode.
Right.
Try to assure them if they'll talk to you. Sometimes, my older son would talk to me about everything. Mm-hmm. I mean, everything.
What a blessing, right?
Yeah, because it was great. So I could say, hey, this isn't reality, this is this. Jonah will just shut down. Mm-hmm. So really you need to rely on therapists. I used to say, for me, if you're cutting where people can see it, in my opinion, this is just my unprofessional opinion.
Mm-hmm. Based on
my own actions and his actions.
Your experience.
Yes.
That's where I was going.
Yes.
It's based on your
experience. Based on my experience.
With self-harm.
With self-harm, I'm crying for help. When I cut here and on my legs and other places where people couldn't see.
Mm-hmm. You were trying to fix something.
I was trying to fix something. Mm-hmm. I disassociate, so that's the way I come back into my body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have another friend who practices self-harm, and it's how she reconnects to her feelings because she gets so disconnected. She gets so disassociated with her emotions and with her feelings that, like you said, harming herself or cutting herself not only brings her physical pain and brings her back into the moment and back into reality, but it also gives her something to take care of and to heal and to mend. And in a way, it's self-soothing.
Right.
Because it's self-care, right? It's like the most toxic form of self-care that there is. Rather than spending time on yourself, giving yourself a bath, meditating, getting your nails done, going tanning, whatever, going out for a girl's day out, whatever.
Right.
It's self-harm followed by, medicating wounds and taking care of wounds and healing physically back to a state of being intact again or being healed again.
Right.
And it really is. It's a form of self-care, and people don't understand because they can't relate. And that's the problem, is that we turn a blind eye to things that we don't understand, or we turn our nose up at something that we don't understand because that's stupid, or they're ignorant, or they're just attention seeking, or whatever.
Weak.
Right.
That's a lot of them.
Well, and 100%, right? They're weak-minded or whatever. And really it comes back to disconnection, broken coping skills, and mental illness.
Yes.
And that's why I say we fail so much with paying attention and really addressing issues. We're fighting about who's dressing like a girl or a boy, and instead we should be taking care of each other and helping each other to learn better coping mechanisms and better ways to deal with reality and better ways to deal with real issues.
Yes.
Rather than worrying about if somebody's calling themselves they or them. It seems so silly to me, the things that we fight and argue about and we protest against.
Well, it's like
but we turn a blind eye to real issues. That are harming people and that people are suffering from every day. Not that people aren't suffering from gender identity or anything like that. I'm sure that there are people who struggle and suffer with that as well. I just feel like mental illness is a much bigger problem.
It is.
And it's swept under the rug because it's foreshadowed by things like, look at this transgender woman stepping into the spotlight, all glitz and glamour, because that's far more exciting and drama and talking about people harming themselves.
The last time Jonah was in the hospital, there were 20 kids waiting there were no beds for children anywhere except Rolling Hills. But we churched in Kentucky, in Jackson. There was no, in Middle Tennessee, 20 kids were waiting for beds.
Yeah.
It's a real thing.
Yeah.
Kids have chemical imbalances just like adults do.
Yeah.
You know?
And trauma.
And trauma.
And broken coping mechanisms and lack of communication skills.
Yes.
Right? Like all of these things that we struggle with as adults, children are struggling with.
And they don't have the experience to back it up, to have any sort of coping or hey, this does work out. Or this does end and something better does happen.
And I have to tell you, and this is my opinion, so we're going to delve out of experience for a minute into opinion, but my opinion is that because of cell phones and social media and everything being brought from the internet right to the end user on the couch, right? Kids are now exposed to things that I wasn't exposed to until I was 16, 17, 18. We're looking at magazines and showing each other Playboy at my friend's house. You know, we're 15, smoking a joint, looking at nudie magazines, and these are 9-year-old kids looking at porn.
Yeah.
Looking at this video, that video, and everything is being publicized and everything is being objectified. Women are being objectified. Sex is being objectified. Everything is being force-fed to our kids at such an alarming rate that they don't have any choice but to start coping and dealing with and processing things that their minds can't even begin to fathom or wrap around or comprehend. And they have no idea how to talk about it because they can't talk about it with their parents. And their peers have no experience to go off of or any kind of insight or wisdom to share with them. So they're toxically raising each other with the internet. And it's frightening.
It's very scary.
It's frightening. And really it all starts at home and it all starts with parents. And it all starts with parents being involved in what their kids are doing and what they're looking at. Now, obviously, the ability to control that is out of reach. Like, there's no way that you can control what your kids look at their friend's house. There's no way that you can control what your kids look at school. But you can certainly dampen how much exposure they get on their own devices at home and around the house.
Oh, definitely.
And who comes over and who brings things to the house and what they're allowed to look at by communicating with their parents' or with their friends' parents. Anyway, I'll tangent this shit in a whole other direction. We can do a podcast just on that.
Yeah, we could.
Anyway, so you've got Cymbalta and Abilify.
Yes.
And you got him into partial hospitalization at Vanderbilt.
Yes.
I'm bringing us back.
Okay. And so then he leaves there. We think everything's going good.
Uh-huh.
And then he takes this box cutter and cuts all up his arms, all on his chest, on his shoulder. And so we take him to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, there's a time before that.
Okay.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's all right.
No, he had done some cutting on his knuckles.
Okay.
And I said, that's a cry for help. It's a cry for help. He wants you to see it. It's a cry for help.
So he cut his knuckles.
Cut his knuckles.
You said that was a cry for help.
That was a cry
Did you
for
say
help.
that to him or did you say that to yourself?
I said that to my ex.
Oh, okay.
And then we took him up to Vanderbilt into the children's ward to be evaluated.
Mm-hmm.
And they met with us separately, and they meet with them separately, and they meet with you.
Mm-hmm.
And we tried to explain that we felt like we were going down a spiral, and he's going to hurt himself, and we need help. Because we don't know what to do. He's already been admitted into hospital.
Right.
He's been in partial hospitalization. So she says that they're going to put him in. So he stays the night there, and a new psychiatrist comes. And says, no, we're not putting him in because he doesn't have a plan.
Okay.
We're going to put him back in partial hospitalization.
Which is, so just so I understand, partial hospitalization is like or outpatient. They go during the day.
Yes,
and then
they
come
go
home
during
at night.
and then come home at night.
Because I know that we do outpatient with treatment the same way with drug and alcohol treatment. So a lot of times people don't get locked up in a rehab. They'll go during the day,
right?
Like classes and groups, and then they'll come home at night. Okay.
And Vanderbilt was awesome.
Okay.
Second time was awesome. He learned new skills, which was great. So we come home, we think everything's going well. Everything seems to be going well. He gets these suicidal ideations again. And this time he cuts all of his arms, on his chest, on his stomach. And we take him back up there.
So just to clarify my understanding of suicidal ideation, because I have a friend that I actually took a friend through the 12 steps of recovery.
Oh.
Dealing with suicidal ideation. So my understanding of suicidal ideation is that it is obsessive compulsive thoughts about taking your life. Uncontrollable obsessive compulsive thoughts about taking your life. So anyone who doesn't understand that or can't wrap their head around that, it's literally having a one-tracked mind and not being able to think about anything but taking your life. And it hits people with PTSD. Specifically, a lot of veterans that suffer from PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder come back from war or come back from traumatic experiences with suicidal ideation. A lot of times it's survivor's guilt. They'll see a fallen comrade blown up or killed in action, and they'll suffer from survivor's guilt, and then they, as a result of that, they will have suicidal ideation. And that was what my friend had specifically, was a survivor's guilt infraction. And we actually worked at 12 steps and replaced alcohol and drugs with suicidal ideation, and I was able to take him through that process, and he was able to have a spiritual experience as a result of working the 12 steps, which is crazy.
That's awesome.
And I mean, it's just the miracle of having a higher power and a relationship with a higher power and God, right? Anyway, I didn't mean to derail. No. I just wanted to clarify what suicidal ideation was for people who might be listening who have no idea what that reference is.
And this has nothing to do with his medicine at the time. Okay, so he's on Cymbalta and Abilify still. We just, at this point, they had upped the doses a little bit. But that's not why he cut himself.
Right.
So then they put him in rolling hills for 10 days.
Okay.
And we have been stable since he has come out of rolling hills. I asked him if he didn't have a plan, but he now knows how to talk to the psychiatrist and get in the hospital. Because sometimes he wants in the hospital. He deals with bullying at school. He deals with lots of other things.
And I would imagine that's 10 times worse, suffering from depression, anxiety, fear, having autism.
Yes.
I'm sure that the bullying is, if it's not worse, I'm sure that it feels 100 times worse.
I'm sure
because
it does.
You're already a target, right? Like you're already...
Yeah, different.
So, okay, so he's had the episode.
Yes.
He's still on the same medication.
Yes, just upped a little bit.
But he has found sanctuary in being able to be institutionalized from time to time.
Yes.
And you're good with that?
No.
Oh, because I feel like I would be. Like I would feel like him having a safe place, and this is just me. I would feel like him having a safe place would be better than the alternative.
I see what you're saying. I do. Here's the problem. When they go into the mental hospital, it costs about $3,000 to $8,000, which I'm broke.
Sure.
So my ex-husband has to pay for it. Of course, he doesn't have endless money either. Sure. He's not a millionaire or anything like that.
Well, I didn't realize that it wasn't like a insurance thing.
It is an insurance thing, but that's your... And they want that money.
That's the copay.
Yeah.
The copay is the $3,000 to $8,000.
Yes.
So, again, here we are, right? Mental illness failing our country. We have children that need medical help, medical attention,
Yes.
And hospitalization, yet even with insurance, we're talking about $3,000 to $8,000 for a temporary stay or an outpatient type situation.
Yeah, it's just expensive.
Yeah.
And what I would like to see happen is for him to find a safe place outside of there with people that he can, he has friends and he does talk to his friends, but growing teenagers
Sure.
up isn't, it just doesn't work that way.
Right.
Unfortunately.
Right.
So my goal is eventually to have him feel good enough to be able to talk to one of us. He does. You've seen him, so he does come out with me now and then.
Yeah, I love it when I see him.
I love it when he comes.
I do. I love it. Like
yeah.
even if it's awkward as hell for him and it's uncomfortable, he's trying.
He is trying.
Yeah.
So we've had a lot of progress since his last stint in Rolling Hills.
And your friends are a bunch of fucking weirdos.
So. Oh, my friends are so weird.
Yeah, definitely. So
you're the weirdest.
100%. 100%. But that's why I always make it a point to say hello to him and greet him and make him feel welcomed. Like I want him to know that I'm happy to see him.
Yeah, he appreciates
even if that's weird. You know what I mean? Like I want the big burly tattooed guy to make him feel welcome. Like I hope that makes him feel more safe. You know what I mean? So
it means a lot to him. It means a lot to me.
Well, I mean, it's important. Like nobody wants to feel ostracized or left out, right? Like
no.
I've never wanted to not feel like I belong.
Right. I agree.
It's important to me that I make other people feel welcome, no matter how odd they are.
Now, I will tell you, Joe, I believe in mental illness. I don't necessarily being medicated. I am kind of with you there on the Ritalin and Adderall. It's just you don't have to conform a person for a situation by drugs, if they don't have some sort of chemical imbalance.
I feel like there's always going to be an exception to the rule. Like, I feel like it would be very close-minded of me to say you should never, ever, ever, ever give your child Ritalin or Adderall. My stance is try everything else in your power first.
Right.
Try spending time with your kids. Invest in educating yourself on focus exercises, on learning exercises, on getting physical exercise. I preach to people every week about getting proper exercise themselves. Go exercise with your kids. Get a bike and go bike riding with your kid.
Yeah.
Get better sleep patterns. Make it a habit for you and your child to get better sleep. Work on better eating habits. I talk about this every week. Listen, the last several episodes that I have done, this stuff has come up, and it's not me. It's the research is there. The solutions are there. When we talked about bad habits and forming good habits and bad habits, when we talked about physical strength and emotional strength and spiritual strength and mental strength, the things that came up for building and strengthening your mind and your emotions were proper sleep, proper exercise, proper food, proper diet, eating fresh foods, getting proper nourishment to our bodies. These things are miraculous vessels that we pilot around if we take care of them. And I can speak to that because I've treated mine like a trash can for 25 years. So I've gotten much more cognitive about how I take care of myself. And it's in everything that I read and everything that I research and every topic that I talk about, diet, exercise, and sleep are like the most important things that you can do for yourself.
Yeah.
Being accountable, maintaining positivity, and working on emotional and spiritual development, those are the things that keep coming up. I'm not making it up.
Right.
Like if you do the research yourself, like I said, I Google searched like I do every week about what I'm talking about. And I look for medical journals, and I look for research, and I look for documentation that supports what I'm reading. I don't just click on the first thing that comes up. it's just so important, and it's not always the solution, and it's not the only solution, right? And like you said, you can throw medicine at your kids, but if you're not working on getting down to causes and conditions, and you're not working on better communication and better coping mechanisms, right? How do we deal when these feelings come up? How do we deal with them?
Right.
How can I make it easier for you to talk to me about it? Right? Like these are the things that we need to be learning about, is communication and learning new coping mechanisms and learning better habits.
Yes.
And especially in dealing with something that you don't know anything about, like this is just hitting you, and you're just kind of having to roll with it. So I can't imagine, like, I know that this has been something that you've been going through for a while now.
Yes.
So can I ask, how long have you been harm-free or incident-free?
For me, personally, or for Jonah?
Both.
Jonah's been harm-free 2 months.
Okay.
Is that right? And personally, 2 years.
So this is something that you've learned yourself how to cope with as an adult and how to deal with in a healthy way.
Yes.
And to come out the other side of it with better coping mechanisms and learning how to identify your own triggers, right? And your own responses.
Yes.
And responding in a healthier way, especially without medicating with drugs and alcohol. Like, that's the thing. I love when Joe Rogan says that, like, sober people deserve a cookie for dealing with this shit sober. You know, and, you know, we don't get that glass of wine. We don't get that.
No, we don't.
That joint, you know, that nobody sees us smoke with our friends, or the beers that we get to go have, or go, you know, the night to let off with the guys or let off with the girls. We just deal with it as it comes because we don't have that off switch. Yeah. And, you know, that doesn't make us better human beings by any means. But, you know, we deal with this shit for real, and we feel all of it. And and that's a blessing and a curse sometimes.
Sometimes it really is.
Well, because really life doesn't always feel good.
No, it doesn't.
And, you know, we spend enough time hiding in the shadows and hiding from ourselves that that's why this is so important to me, because I feel like a lot of people struggle, and a lot of people struggle with everything that we talk about, with drugs and alcohol, with self-harm, self-medicating, but no matter what it is, right?
Right.
Like, people can medicate with all kinds of things.
Oh, shopping, and I do that.
Shopping, sex, gambling.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much anything that gives you some sort of a rush,
yes,
right, can be used in excess to deal or cope with our feelings. So I'm glad. I thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, well, thank you for having me.
Definitely. And we should definitely talk about other things, because I'm sure that there are other subjects that we could talk about.
I'm sure there are.
Yeah. But, you know, when we got to talking that day about different topics, and specifically about medicating children, it dawned on me that you had been going through this, and that you had a much different take and a much different experience. And as passionate as I am about my side of the conversation, and as strongly as I feel about it, it definitely opened my mind to the exceptions and to the importance of medicating children. On the other end of that spectrum, we're talking about kids that are hyperactive and kids that have mental illnesses and mental disorders and broken functionality that needs assistance.
Can I just say that for anybody struggling with their children, do your due diligence, get them evaluated, get therapy, and then if you're still uncomfortable and not ready to go to a psychiatrist, get therapy. Get them diagnosed by somebody who does multiple tests, so you can feel comfortable with a psychiatrist, and get on, decent medications. Have those conversations with your kids about, do you feel suicidal? Do you feel different? How do you feel today on this medication? I don't know. It's important. It is important. It is important. And they're suffering.
Well, and it's important that other people know that they're not alone. Right? Like, that's what this is all about. It comes down to, if you're out there and you're struggling with a child who has mental illness and you don't know what to do, there are resources. There are places that you can go. There are people you can talk to. And there are people who are going through it and have gone through it before you. And reach out. Reach out to any of the resources that I put in the comments below. Reach out to myself. You can reach out to me. I get teased about my email because I use email and nobody uses email anymore. I'm not cool enough to be using Instagram or Snapchat.
I don't do that either.
I'm sure
I don't
at
have
some
that
point,
kind of time.
Right. Like I have a full-time job and a full-time life, so it's learning other apps and
This doesn't.
media is just spins me out.
You can put my email. I'll give it to you.
Okay. So you definitely have resources. You definitely have places you can go, people you can talk to. We're going to make some of those things accessible to you. Thank you for tuning in. This has been We Are A.P.E.S Development, episode 11, about medicating children. I'm Joe Morotto. This is my friend Heather. I don't care what you say about me as long as you talk about me.